The morning was unusually cold, and the city buzzed with the rush of people heading to work. Cars honked, traders shouted, and life moved at its normal pace. But Daniel's world froze the moment he saw her, a woman sitting by the roadside, shivering, with a small paper cup in her hand. She wore a faded blue gown, her hair unkempt, and her eyes hollow with exhaustion. It took him a few seconds to believe what he was seeing. The woman begging by the street corner was his ex-wife, Melissa. For a while, he just stood there in disbelief. This was the same woman who once walked around with pride, driving his car and wearing designer shoes. The same woman who left him after he lost his job 3 years ago, calling him a failure without vision. Now she sat barefoot, stretching her hand to strangers for coins. He couldn't move closer. He couldn't drive away either. Memories rushed back, their laughter, their fights, the day she walked out with her suitcase. Life had turned sharply, and fate seemed to be whispering a lesson he wasn't ready to learn. Before we continue this story, make sure you like, subscribe, and comment where you're watching from. London, California, Jamaica, Trinidad, New York, Florida, Atlanta, Nigeria, or South Africa. We love hearing from you. And remember, we give a warm shout-out to the first 3 people who comment, so don't miss your chance. Daniel slowly stepped out of his car, confusion clouding his thoughts. Was this really her, or was fate playing tricks on his mind again? His heart pounded as he took a few steps forward. Melissa lifted her head, and their eyes met. What happened next would change both of their lives forever. For a moment, Melissa froze, her eyes widening as if she had seen a ghost. Daniel's tall figure stood before her, dressed neatly in a black jacket and crisp white shirt. His car engine hummed softly behind him, a symbol of the success he had found after their divorce. The wind carried the silence between them, and Melissa's trembling hands tightened around her cup. She looked away, ashamed. Daniel's heart ached. He remembered how she used to laugh at his dreams, telling him that love couldn't survive on hope and promises. She had left when the bills piled up and when the landlord threw them out. That memory had fueled his ambition. After she left, he worked night and day, building his small delivery business until it became one of the most reliable in the city. Yet seeing her there now, he felt no pride, only pity and confusion. He knelt slightly beside her and whispered, "What happened, Melissa?" She tried to speak, but her voice cracked. Her tears mixed with the dust on her face as she confessed that her new husband had abandoned her after losing everything in a failed investment. He took their savings and left her stranded in the city. With no friends, no family willing to help, she had ended up begging to survive. Daniel looked at her in silence, battling with mixed emotions. Part of him wanted to walk away, to let karma do its work. But another part of him remembered the woman he once loved, the one who once stood by him before pride took over. Fate had brought them back to the same street where everything began. He sighed deeply, unsure of his next move. Was this a test of forgiveness, or destiny giving him a second chance to show who he truly was? Daniel stood quietly beside Melissa, his thoughts heavy with conflict. The same woman who once mocked his poverty now sat at his feet, broken and hungry. He watched as people passed her without a glance, dropping coins occasionally, like she was invisible. Something in him softened. He reached into his pocket and handed her a bundle of cash. But when she tried to reject it, saying she didn't deserve it, his heart twisted. He spoke gently. "You don't have to deserve kindness, Melissa. Life turns in ways none of us expect." She broke down, sobbing into her palms. He helped her to her feet, noticing how thin she had become. The once elegant lady who wore perfume and high heels now wore torn slippers and smelled of the streets. Daniel guided her to his car as people watched, whispering. It didn't matter to him. He just wanted to do what was right. Inside the car, the silence was thick. Melissa couldn't stop crying, muttering apologies through tears. Daniel simply drove, unsure what to say. He took her to a small restaurant, ordered food, and watched her eat like someone who hadn't eaten in days. Guilt and compassion warred inside him. He wondered if he was doing it out of pity or out of love that never fully died. After the meal, she looked at him with trembling lips and said, "I wish I had listened. You were the only one who truly cared for me." Daniel didn't respond immediately. He just looked out the window and said quietly, "Maybe we both had lessons to learn." He offered to help her get back on her feet, not as her husband, but as someone who once shared dreams with her. This was the beginning of something neither of them saw coming. A second chance not at love, but at redemption. The drive back to Daniel's house was quiet, filled with heavy memories. Melissa sat beside him, staring at her reflection in the window, unable to believe she was back in the same man's car whom she had once insulted. The streetlights reflected off her tear-streaked face, and Daniel noticed how time had humbled her. Life had done what pride could not. When they arrived at his gate, she hesitated to step out, embarrassed by her appearance. Daniel's home was simple but beautiful, a reflection of his hard work. He opened the door for her, and she walked in slowly, looking around with silent awe. It was clean, peaceful, and warm, a far cry from the cold nights she had spent on the roadside. Daniel brought her an old blanket and told her she could stay in the guest room for a while until she figured things out. Melissa tried to refuse again, but he insisted gently. Sometimes, helping those who hurt us becomes the biggest test of our humanity. That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. He sat by his window, thinking about everything. Forgiving her wasn't easy, but he felt lighter doing it. He remembered the bitterness that had consumed him after she left, the long nights of hunger, loneliness, and anger. Yet, seeing her suffering now, he realized revenge would bring him no peace. In her room, Melissa wept quietly, clutching the blanket he gave her. She had never felt so small. The man she once called weak had become the one saving her from the streets. Life had taught her a harsh lesson, that true strength isn't measured by wealth, but by the size of a person's heart. Outside, the rain began to fall, washing away the pain of yesterday and perhaps giving them both a new beginning. The next morning, the smell of coffee filled the house. Daniel was in the kitchen, quietly making breakfast when Melissa walked in, her eyes swollen from crying all night. She hesitated at the door, ashamed to face him. The memories of how she once spoke down to him, calling him useless, came flooding back. She remembered throwing his clothes out the day she left, saying she was done suffering beside a man with no future. And yet here she was, standing in his kitchen, saved by the same man she once rejected. Daniel didn't look at her right away. He just said softly, "There's food on the table. You can eat before you leave." His voice was calm, but she could feel the distance. She sat down slowly, her hands trembling. "I'm not going anywhere," she whispered. "Not until I say what I should have said years ago." He looked up, his eyes searching hers. Tears rolled down her face as she began to speak. "Daniel, I was proud, selfish, and blind. I left when I should have stayed. You were building something real, but I couldn't see it because I was chasing what glittered. I'm sorry. I truly am." Her voice broke as she buried her face in her palms. Daniel said nothing for a long time.
He finally stood up, walked over, and placed a hand on her shoulder. "Melissa, life has already punished both of us in different ways. I forgave you a long time ago, not because you asked, but because I needed peace." In that moment, she broke down completely. The silence between them turned soft, filled not with resentment, but with understanding. Sometimes forgiveness isn't about forgetting the pain. It's about choosing to rise above it.
Days turned into weeks, and Melissa slowly began to regain her strength. She started helping around the house, cleaning, cooking, and even assisting Daniel with his business errands. At first, Daniel was distant, speaking to her only when necessary. But little by little, the walls began to crumble. He could see she was genuinely trying to change. The arrogance in her eyes was gone, replaced by humility and gratitude. One evening, while sorting from files, Daniel noticed how carefully she was helping him organize the invoices. She had learned everything quickly, staying up late just to understand how the business worked. When he asked her why, she said softly, "I want to be useful again. I lost everything, not just money, but my sense of purpose." Daniel nodded quietly, feeling something stir in his heart. She was no longer the woman who walked away. She was someone broken, but willing to rebuild. That night, as they sat in the living room, Melissa looked at him and said, "You became the man I always wanted, but I was too blind to see he was already there." Daniel smiled faintly. Maybe we both needed to lose each other, to learn who we really were. Before we head to the final part of this story, make sure you like, subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from. London, California, Jamaica, Trinidad, New York, Florida, Atlanta, Nigeria, or South Africa. We love hearing from you. And don't forget, the first 3 comments always get a shout-out in our next video. As the night deepened, a new peace filled the air. Forgiveness had done what revenge never could. It had healed 2 broken souls who once destroyed each other. Months passed, and Melissa's life slowly found balance again. She had started a small clothing shop with Daniel's help, and for the first time in years, she was earning an honest living. The shame that once weighed on her heart had been replaced with gratitude. Every morning, she thanked Daniel not for saving her life, but for showing her what true strength looked like: kindness. The two became close again, not as lovers, but as friends, connected by the lessons of pain and forgiveness. One quiet Sunday afternoon, Daniel stopped by her shop. He watched her attend to customers with a calm smile, so different from the proud woman he once knew. When she saw him, her eyes lit up. "Thank you, Daniel," she said, "for not turning away when you had every reason to." He smiled gently. "You don't owe me thanks, Melissa. You just needed someone to believe you could start again." As they stood there, the world around them seemed to pause. Their story wasn't about romance anymore, it was about redemption. The man who was once broken had become a healer, and the woman who once mocked weakness had found strength through humility. Life had brought them full circle, and in that moment, they both understood that every ending can also be a beginning if forgiveness finds a place in the heart. If you enjoyed this emotional story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment where you're watching from: London, California, Jamaica, Trinidad, New York, Florida, Atlanta, Nigeria, or South Africa. We love to hear from you. And remember, the first 3 people who comment below will get a special shout-out in our next video. Moral lesson: never look down on anyone because of where they are today. Life can change in a moment, and the same person you despise today may be the one destiny uses to lift you tomorrow. Choose kindness, because pride fades, but compassion never dies.